Overwhelmed with data, but looking for a way to improve your results? Watch this video to learn a process that works for sports betting and anyone else who wants to use data to get better at what they do. Welcome to The Advantage. I'm A-Train Bets, and I use my brain to make bets. Now, this is a video that I've been wanting to do for a long time. Before I came into the world of sports betting, I spent 25 years in data as a data leadership consultant, management consultant, an executive that was a chief data officer. I used to do analytics back in the day. I learned programming and built financial trading systems, did a whole bunch of technology work, but all of it had the common thread of using data. Now, in this video, we want to cover how you use data to improve what you do. I've been in data longer than many of our competitors have been alive. And it's what I've been doing in this space has been helping organizations understand what the data is telling them, how to improve their business processes, how to create automations and optimizations of what they do as a business based on what the data is telling them to then have better results. This is what I have done in extremely large organizations, in extremely fast-moving organizations, in extremely old-school organizations who were struggling to keep up with those new organizations that I was also working with. But I've seen data in every conceivable capacity. But in my experience, there are some common threads that apply to all these businesses, and it applies to sports betting. And when I saw the kinds of things that were out there in terms of lessons and talk and helping people do their sports betting, I found that a lot of it was surface deep. A lot of it didn't really help a person understand what they were doing. Usually it was just designed to separate them from some money. But what I say is, you can do this, but you need to understand what it takes to do this. And that's part of the game. That's part of the fun, is to understand how we use data to improve our sports betting. So what we're going to talk about in this video is something that actually comes from my data leadership book. There's a concept in there that I think applies directly to what we are doing in sports betting. And it's also one of the foundational principles of any kind of data-driven behavior out there. And that is what we call the virtuous cycle. And this virtuous cycle is basically how we leverage data to improve our business processes, to create better outcomes, to then get better understanding, to then further improve the business process. And it is a cycle. It iterates, it repeats. And this is something that every sports bettor out there needs to understand. Every person who's using data in any capacity needs to understand what this virtuous cycle is, because it is how data-driven behaviors actually happen. This is not something that I invented. This is something that I put words behind to describe what was already going on. The virtuous cycle, when we apply it to sports betting, is going to help you understand where are there holes in your game of sports betting, of the bets, of the decisions, of the activities you're trying to make. How might we improve those? And how might we learn from that? Okay? And the ultimate goal is obviously to win the most money possible. But there's a lot of intermediary goals that will help us in that journey. And so the virtuous cycle helps us understand what those are. So the first thing that we're going to do in the virtuous cycle is something we call measure. Measuring is exactly what it sounds like. It's what is the data that we're going to be able to find useful? What is the data that we're going to be able to take and understand? And we're not talking about making good bets here. What we're talking about is helping to improve our strategy of making good bets, right? Anytime you're using any kind of tool like A-Train Station or anything that you're using to make bets, right now you might be just using some hunches. You might be saying, I got feelings about sports and I'm going to bet with those feelings. And that's okay. That's a place to start. But you need to be more thoughtful if you're going to use data to drive those future activities and decisions, because this stuff doesn't just happen through feelings. You need a process. Okay. And the first part of that process is to measure. And when we talk about measuring, we're talking about not just the bets, though that is an important part of what we're going to measure. We're talking about all of the aspects of your strategy. So first, let's cover the three sections of the virtuous cycle. So the first one's measure. The other two are hypothesize and implement. And we're going to cover what each of those means and what you want to be thinking about in all of them. But what happens there in that cycle, measure, we're going to get situational awareness. We're going to get an understanding of what is happening and what might there be in terms of edges or opportunities for us to do something different. You can think about in a corporate world where you see sales information, or you see product costs, you see customer demographic information. You can see all these different things that are going to lead you to ideas, right? So you take these measurements, you take the data, and the most valuable data is the data that is unique to you. And that's true in a business, but that's especially true in sports betting. What is the unique data that is representative of the strategy that you're using or the bets that you've made? Second, hypothesize. This is where you're taking ideas and you're going to say, not only what are ideas of things that I might be doing that aren't particularly productive? What are the things that I'm not doing that would be very useful to do? And what can I do to understand better what is effective and what is not? And that's where in the hypothesize, it's about saying, hey, how can I deliberately choose activities and decisions and make things part of my process that are going to help me learn more and have better outcomes in the end, both through improving what I'm doing, improving the bets that I'm making, but also improving how I learn from them. And so we're going to talk about that part. And then finally, the implement is where we're actually going and taking those hypotheses, those experiments, those insights of here's what we want to learn from. And then we're going and taking and doing certain things to execute in our betting strategy so that we not only have the best results possible, which is obviously something that we care about on a day in and day out basis, but it's also going to be the most informative. So there's value, not just in the dollars we win or lose, but there's value in the information that comes back to us. And that's a really important part of that implementation because that's how this cycle repeats itself. So I want you to be thinking about this. And we're going to talk now about some of the specific things you're going to want to do in this simple virtuous cycle, because each thing you do better leads to better results in the next stage, and that leads to more information, that leads you to better ideas, and it just starts to move faster and faster and faster. You might hear in the business context, organizations love the term flywheel. Flywheel is where you start to spin things faster and you start to accelerate the rest of it, and then there's low friction. The whole idea of a flywheel is there's low friction. Well, in this case, what we're trying to do is improve our betting through low friction engagements with it. Okay, so let's cover this measure in more detail first. So the first step is measure. Now, the very, very first thing I want you to do to first record your betting strategy, right? Not your bets, your strategy for making bets. Now, I have something that I call my golden rules of sports betting for me, right? And they're evolving. I'm always thinking about them. I'm always looking at them. But when I'm in there working in A-Train Station to come up with bets that I want to make, there's certain things I'm always keying off of. The most important is probably the fact that anytime I make a bet, I need 2 or more reasons. My reminder to myself, and what I have documented in my rules, is bets must have 2+ reasons. And that to me is such an important piece because I want to see multiple perspectives and I want to make decisions when I can sort of say, hey, this edge has multiple different viewpoints, cast light from multiple different directions. This play seems to have edge from multiple different viewpoints. So that's the thing. Take all of the things that guide your strategy. And the question you might ask yourself now is, what are the things that are guiding my strategy? Again, this is why recording it is so important, because it starts to bring it clear to you. And it starts to be something that you have to own. You have to say, okay, well, if I've recorded this rule, I either need to acknowledge I'm breaking this rule or I need to change the rule. So this in and of itself is a very powerful mechanism to help improve your sports betting. Okay. So record the strategy, record the components of your strategy, and be aware of when your activities are either in alignment with that documented strategy or in violation of it. And that will teach you about how you are going about your betting as well. Again, none of this stuff is specific. This is all guiding principle process stuff that will help anyone at any level, but it is not obvious. So if you've never thought about this stuff, don't worry about it. I had 25 years of experience in seeing how companies mismanage their data constantly to understand some of these things. And once you see them, you're like, oh yeah, that makes sense. It's simple. But you may never have thought about it before now. Okay. Next thing in our measure is to record your bets. Make sure you are recording your bets. Not only do you need to do this from an accounting and tax perspective, but you also need to understand what decisions did I actually make. And you'll see on my live stream, a lot of times I'll make bets. I'll both tell you not to make a particular bet, but I also say, I'm making this bet because I want to capture the data around it. And I know that if I ignore this bet, it won't be as tangible to me that I was making this decision. I'll tag it. I'll notice, I'll note that, hey, I'm going to do this for this reason, blah, blah, blah. But I will make the bet because I want to make it tangible. And part of that recording your bets isn't just saying, oh, I bet this at this place. Note what strategy was involved. Why did you choose this? Was this a high confidence play or a low confidence play? How did I do it? You can use a piece of paper. You don't have to use A-Train Station, which makes it easy to tag stuff. You can just do this on your own notepad. That's fine too. But note why you chose to make this play. Did your buddy just tell you it was a good idea? Well, over time, you can go and track how those buddy recommended picks did. Right? Maybe your buddy is really good at this, right? But at least understand where those bets came from and then be able to go back and look at them later and learn from them. Otherwise, you're just throwing money away. Throwing away the information is like throwing away cash. Don't do it. Capture it. Measure it. Okay? The other thing is that once you start to collect information about your strategies, information about your bets and how they are connected to your strategies, pay attention to the metrics that come out of it. What were you thinking your EV estimate was? What did you think your EV was on a particular play? Granted, one play by itself isn't good. It's going to win or lose. It's not going to have that EV, but you can look at over time. Am I getting close to the EV I thought I was getting? A lot of times you won't be. Look at your closing line value. See how does the plays that I'm actually making, how does that match up to the closing line? Am I way off? Right? Because over time, your actual return should be close to your CLV. Your EV estimate should be close to your CLV. Your actual return should be close to your CLV. A lot of times they're not. Why aren't they? Where is the hole in your game? That's what you're going to be thinking about. Okay. Finally, just make sure you're capturing your results. Know whether you're winning or losing, whether or not those wins and losses were aligned with the closing line value, the EV. A lot of these things are best looked at over time in aggregation, but you've got to capture them in the detail so that you can aggregate them and learn from the trends. Okay. Next section of the virtuous cycle is hypothesize. Now, this is a word in my first book, actually, I called this something different, but I like the term hypothesize because it shows your thinking about what you see in that measure section, right? And the key to this is identifying holes, saying, where am I not getting the results I should? Based on what I know from the measurements, where are those holes? Just document the holes. Just say, there's something wrong with this strategy. Doesn't seem to be working, right? So check that. Think about, how might I improve on that? What might be a possible improvement? What could I do differently here that could either improve things further or make things worse? Don't just say, oh, I'm going to try to do only the things that I think are for sure going to win. No, try things that you're like, this is either going to go really well or really bad. But you're going to learn from it because you're going to get data on it. You don't have to bet $1 billion. I am most of the time, like on my live streams, I bet way under what I could afford to bet in reality because I'm testing stuff out constantly. When you come onto the live stream and listen and see what I'm doing, it's not about whether or not I'm winning money every day. It's about how am I breaking down things that I'm learning about, things that I'm seeing, trying different things. Let me try it with my money and you can learn from it too. Because I go on in the live stream and do it and you can do some of your own as well. Right. So that's where we can start to really understand, hey, where might we improve things? And sometimes I'll do things like, I think this is going to be the wrong thing to do, but I'm going to do it anyway. I'll make some bets this way. I'll make $10 bets. Fine. Let's go. Let's try on the strategy. I think the strategy is going to be terrible. And then all of a sudden make a ton of money. I'm like, oh, apparently it wasn't a bad strategy. Right. That can happen. Okay. Create experiments to learn efficacy. Figure out, hey, seeing something here. It's weird. Seeing something. Let me try this strategy. I have a strategy right now that I've been toying with. I don't know what the outcome of it's going to be yet. I call it the stinks like money because something smells fishy. And I'm like, you know what smells fishy? Money. It's not a great illusion. But the fact is I call it the stinks like money. And what I'm doing is I'm saying, hey, these exchanges, people can go market make on these exchanges. And then there's certain cases where this exchange number seems way off of where it should be. But then you look at it and you're like, there's a ton of liquidity only on that side and no one's taking it. Why is that line so far off and there's so much money behind it? It's interesting, right? So I go and try to play some of the opposite side, the side that was creating that liquidity that I go play at the exchange. I can go play the other side. I don't know where it's going to lead yet, but it's one that I'm working on, right? It's something that I'm experimenting with to gather more data to develop a strategy that might have legs, right? Might have legs. So those are the kinds of things that you want to be thinking about. Create an experiment. Say, okay, I'm going to go in and play. I lost a few $100s yesterday trying that out because I'm like, give me as much of the data as you can on this. And so then I learned from it. And I was able to say, okay, I had a couple dozen bets. Now I see some patterns here that I think are interesting. And now I can see another way I can improve iteratively on that stinks like money strategy to something that I think will be more effective now that I've gathered some data in a dedicated way. So that's something that you should think about as well, is how can these experiments, how might these ways that I'm playing and the bets that I'm making can teach me something? Think about how can I create the most difference in my future behaviors? Okay, in the future bets that I'm going to make. So I took yesterday, fairly quiet day. I'm going to go stinks like money as much as I can today. And I focused on it when I was betting in the afternoon. And I said, okay, I'm going to take this strategy. The details of that strategy do not matter. What I'm saying is that if you can think about how might you do a study or do an experiment that will teach you the most possible, that is really valuable. You bet $5 for a day on a bunch of stuff, fine. Learn from the picks, learn from the result, learn from the CLV, learn from how you broke down those opportunities. And then the next day you can try something else. That is how you start to create differential. And that's the whole thing. In my data leadership book, I talk about data value. And data value is the difference between the outcomes, the results you get by using data versus what you would have had if you didn't do that. And what that naturally drives you to do is do things that will lead to the greatest differences possible. And that's what you want to be thinking about when you create these experiments. When you create these ways of gathering more data, think about what will drive the biggest difference in behavior, which will likely lead to the biggest difference in outcome down the road. So again, continue to learn from that data, continue to measure, continue to come up with new ideas. Let's talk a little bit about the third step of the virtuous cycle, which is implement. Right? This is where we are actually doing our betting. This is where we are actually taking and conducting the activities that the data drives for us. Again, this isn't about betting. This is about data-driven behaviors that happen to apply to betting, to sports betting. Great. But there are so many different games, so many different ways, so many different businesses. Everything that's data-driven can follow this pattern and benefit from it. So when we are going to go and implement and actually conduct our activities, conduct our operations, do our manufacturing process, whatever it is. When we go start first, knowing that there's limited time that you have to do your betting. First, focus on the things that have proven to be the most effective. First, spend the bulk of your time on what works best, because those are going to be the most advantageous plays. You're going to know, hey, these are a couple of the strategies that I use that tend to have the best results. I want to make sure, we eat today, right? I want to make sure that we are putting our best foot forward on that stuff. But make sure you carve out a little bit of time. And some days, maybe more time. Some days, no time at all. Fine. But spend some time on those experiments that you hypothesized and do so deliberately. Say, you know what? I did an hour of betting, did all my core reliable strategies, positive EV and all over the place. Fine. Do an arbitrage, all of that. Good. Do it. But I'm going to take the next half an hour and I'm going to do this experiment. I'm going to run my stinks like money queries and I'm going to go and I'm going to look for those opportunities. I'm going to see what I can find. And I'm going to document them. I'm going to tag them. I'm going to write them down in my notebook, whatever I want to do. But I'm going to make sure I'm gathering some data so that tomorrow I can be a little bit better at this. That's what it's all about. That's what it's all about. And then the other key piece to all of this is, especially in the implement phase, is to be curious. This is the most important quality you will have in your betting, is to be curious about stuff that you're seeing and say, that doesn't look right. That looks strange. That's where new future hypothesizes come from. that's where new future ideas come from. Right? So when you go in and you're saying, hey, this doesn't quite fit the pattern that I'm used to, or something's different here. Maybe somebody's offering lines a little bit different than you usually see, or there's some line movement that is unusual. Just be curious to that fact and start to notice things. Notice when something seems amiss. These are wonderful opportunities to start to create and develop strategies around them. Because quite frankly, we are inundated, right? They're the very basic bettors out there just betting with their feelings. They don't think about the data. They're not trying to get better. They just want to have some sort of distraction from their day. Fine. They can donate to the sports book so we can go make some real money. But then you have a lot of the bettors out there who love the simple answer. They're like, ooh, I've got arbitrage now. Risk-free, risk-free. There's a lot of risk in arbitrage. We have a video on that. But even the EV strategies, these are very brute force, very one-dimensional. This number's bigger. Oh, Pinnacle says this. You can go bet this. Magic algorithm that. It's one-dimensional. There's no thought involved. You're just going trying to beat the other 1,000 people that are doing exactly the same strategy. You're trying to beat them to the same exact bets in the exact same order. That's not really sharp sports betting. That's not really data-driven behavior. You're just executing somebody else's process. Right? They're giving you some data and you're like, I can do this. Right? The reality is that if you want to be a true, proper, serious sports bettor, advantage sports bettor, you need to be thinking for yourself, because you are capable of finding edge that nobody else has found before. You are capable of looking and seeing something that nobody else has noticed. And when you can do that, and when you find those unique needles in that haystack, and you are the first to market, and you are getting these plays that nobody else is even aware of, not only is it very lucrative, but it's also a heck of a lot of fun. It's a heck of a lot of fun to be in the game, thinking through things, beating the books at this data game that they are, again, just as lazy as anyone else. They're running their algorithms, they're moving their lines, they're limiting the good players, they're doing all that. You can come at it and win. And that to me is the key, is like, if you can go in and be engaged, be curious, and have some process through measuring, hypothesizing, implementing, and improving all of them all the time. Now you're in an entirely different world. A very small fraction of sports bettors out there go through anything that serious to try to improve. And quite frankly, I think a lot of the people out there that are touting their picks and selling their discords and doing all the stuff that you're going to hear all over the place, they don't even do it. They're too busy marketing. They're too busy amplifying. I would rather create a video from time to time that can help you think and help you learn, and you can take that to whatever tool you want, and you can go and have success. Because quite frankly, I got sick of the corporate world, where I was trying to help people do this in the corporate context where they didn't care. Here, at least, we get to have some fun. Here, at least, we get to be sports bettors engaged in a game that we enjoy, and we have this opportunity to go and use data just like the big books. We can come in and we can find those plays that nobody else even sees. This is an awesome, awesome game. And with the Simple Virtuous Cycle, with improving your process, with being deliberate, and with record that damn strategy, you can improve your results. So with that, that's what I wanted to cover today. Hope you found it interesting. Hope you found it helpful. Got a whole bunch of other videos throughout our channel on YouTube. Please check those out. Definitely come and become part of our community on our free Discord, atraindiscord.com. You can become a part of that, learn, ask questions, and have this game that we enjoy playing, have that be something beyond just betting with your feelings, sweating some bets, enjoying some games. But let's recognize this is beyond that. This is something that is at a professional level. This is like what traders do, options traders, and the people that are doing financial investments for a living. This is the kind of stuff that they do. And so you can approach your hobby of sports betting like a pro. And that's really what it's all about. So thank you for watching this. I appreciate you sticking till the end. And for now, this train's leaving the station. Until next time, save the units for the bros and do your betting like the pros. Thank you.